Thank you. Thanks, Noreen. Good evening, everybody. Should I sit or stand? Or okay. So good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. So as Noreen mentioned, I am a funeral director with the Mystic Funeral Home. I've been a licensed funeral director for 32 years, and I've been the owner and funeral director at the Mystic Funeral Home for the last 18 years. So it's a pleasure to be here. So I want to talk a little bit about pre-planning funerals. And for those of you sitting in the room here, if you've ever pre-planned, you know a little bit about what it entails. It can be, a little bit overwhelming making funeral arrangements. And we have a lot of individuals that come to the funeral home now, and we do advanced planning, which is coming in and getting all of your affairs in order. And we find that it is a great, I call it a great gift that you can leave your loved ones behind, because you have the opportunity to come in and put all of your thoughts and wishes down. And so, as Noreen mentioned, that your wishes are going to be carried out. And again, it gives you peace of mind. And it also, again, lets your family know what you want and what you don't want. So we have many, many people come in and do advanced planning. And when you think about it, it really makes a lot of sense. Throughout our life, we plan for everything. We plan for birthdays, celebrations, weddings, anything. Nobody really likes to talk about death, but it's part of life, and it's going to happen to all of us. And the more that you can do ahead of time is going to be most beneficial for your family. Also, at times, families come in and prepay, and you have the advantage of doing that. And so some families take it to the final step after they pre-arrange. You can prepay. And a little bit about that is you can come in, secure your funds in a trust, and it goes away for your funeral. So you have the opportunity to come in and prepay and get that all taken care of as well. And the money, again, is secured in a trust, and it stays in the trust until you pass away. And then the funds are released to the funeral home to take care of your services. Has anybody in here, I'm sure, has made funeral arrangements before? So you know that it can be a little bit overwhelming. And again, we have many, many people come in and take care of it ahead of time. And it's just a big advantage. Yes. Great question. Well, if I'm answering your question, if your funds are secured in a funeral home here and you pass away in another state or you move to another state, your funds could be transferred to any other funeral home to take care of your arrangements. It kind of follows you wherever you go. So if you relocate, the funeral home goes out of business, closes its doors, you can move your arrangements in your trust to any other funeral home. Yep.
So the services that you offer,
Yep, we offer cremation, burial services, wakes, church services, funeral home services. We're a full service funeral home. So depending on what a family or individual would want, we can accommodate all of their wishes. Well, some of the trends aren't really here yet on this side of the coast. A lot of the trends start on the West Coast, and it takes a while to come this way. I've heard of the composting option, but I haven't specifically dealt with any of that yet. Even green burials, it's starting to come around. I think we only have 2 cemeteries in the state of Connecticut that is green. But again, it's one of those trends that just hasn't gotten here yet. I know it's more popular out west and on the West Coast. But I think we'll see it at some point. I just don't know when.
I think Vermont is trying to get.
Yeah.
But then that would entail that you would have to like employ a funeral home to then take your body. It has to be transferred, and then there's all these permits and stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
You can't just throw someone in the back. your car and say,
Right.
I want to come.
I think there's a green cemetery in Haddam, and then there's another one, I think, on the other side of Danbury.
There's one in Middletown.
Okay.
There's one in Lebanon, but in Lebanon, you have to be a resident
Okay.
of Lebanon.
All right.
And I know Kyle, Stonington Cemetery is looking.
You're looking into that, right? Somebody just told me about that.
They're calling it traditional burial instead of green. It's the same thing. It's just that that's how people were buried when we were more of a farming community
Mhm.
here. The farmers would have a piece of land on their property, and that would become the family cemetery. And it was a green burial. They didn't do embalming or, But I think Stonington Cemetery is looking into that. Go ahead.
So
Yeah.
my name is Kyle Berg. I'm the treasurer of the Stonington Cemetery on North Main Street. As Noreen said, we've been getting some, and Stephen said, we've been getting some inquiries on what services the cemetery can provide, and folks have reached out and said, what are our regulations? So we don't necessarily have any regulations. We just recently worked and did some research with Tom, our president, did some research looking at the different laws that the state had. Our cemetery personally does not require a burial vault. We offer whichever services you provide. So if you want to be cremated, you can have your ashes interred at the cemetery, and if you want to be, if you want we call it a full burial. If you want your body buried, we of course allow that. You can either have it in a casket in a vault, which is the most common, I would say. But now we're getting inquiries where somebody just reached out and said, I'm building my own pine box and I would like no embalming. I just want to be buried in a pine box in the cemetery. Would you allow that? So we do offer that if that is what somebody chooses. If someone wanted to buy a casket from the funeral home and be buried with no vault, they could. There's no.
But that's not, you're working towards that because I'm sure there's some permits that you have to probably apply for through the state.
Yeah, so Tom is taking the lead with the legality in that, but we don't have anything in our bylaws that say we require X. But we can't, one thing that we can't do is just show up to the cemetery and scatter. We do, as Stephen said, do everything by the book and file reports with the town and work together with many. We require a cremation certificate and everything is done before.
So I have a question for you, Kyle. So if I'm serving a family and they have a question about a green burial at Stonington,
Yep.
I should just have them get in touch with the cemetery?
The Stonington Cemetery at Gmail.
Okay, easy enough.
You have to have a casket, or can you just have a shroud?
So we're looking into that as one of the other options. If there's no restrictions on the state level, then we would support it.
But didn't Tom address that at one of our meetings? I thought he said that the laws, the cemetery laws, haven't really changed. Like they're still the same.
Well, yeah, that's probably why not many green cemeteries have come up because it's probably the restrictions are very tight.
So is Stonington Cemetery reaching out to like Lebanon or Middletown
That is in the works. I'm personally not on that committee, but
Right.
that is in the
to
works.
kind of find out, you shouldn't have to recreate the wheel if they're already doing it.
And as Stephen said, we're not a green cemetery because we support all
Yes.
choices.
Well, and Tom wouldn't call it green. He's very
Traditional.
much about
Yeah.
that it would be a traditional burial.
Yeah. But we
Is the terminology, but
Yeah.
we've probably had every type that you can, dating back to the 1700s.
Do a non-traditional burial for the compost as opposed to, but so who supplies like the backhoe and everything? They go, oh, do you have to still get the cemetery involved? I mean, no, or is that?
So that's not, I don't see this, I think that'd be more of a Stephen question.
I mean, I don't understand the legalities as
I'll defer to you, yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously, if you're going to have a full body burial, whether you go in a wicker casket or a steel casket or a wood casket, you still have to involve the funeral home because they have to transport the deceased. And then there's still a grave digger that's involved. So,
So if you die in a hospital,
yes,
you have to be transported to a funeral home,
absolutely. Yes.
but there's no embalming.
There's only embalming. Embalming, a lot of people think you have to be embalmed when you pass away. Connecticut law is you only have to be embalmed if you're choosing an open casket with viewing. So if somebody passes away and they want to have a wake, but they don't want to have a viewing of their loved one, embalming is not necessary or required, and you don't have to pay for it.
So you can hold on to them.
Absolutely. Yep. They could be dressed in clothing. They could be dressed in a shroud. They can be buried in a very simple pine box, a wicker casket. And if we do a green burial or traditional burial, as you all know, you have to have those. Currently, you have to have the concrete vault.
Right.
It's a receptacle that goes around the casket. Going green is basically removing that.
Yeah.
So the casket goes right in the earth. So,
And going green means no embalming.
it could also
Right.
mean no embalming,
Right.
no chemicals in the body.
Right, and that the container would be biodegradable.
For the most part, yes. The wicker casket or the container that the person is would go back to the earth. No vault around the casket. Sure, sure. So everything is actually just going to go back to the earth.
Right.
Yep.
Who takes care of getting from the hospital to the funeral home? The funeral home? Or the
Yes,
hospital?
the funeral home.
So if you don't have a funeral home, what happens?
Oh gosh, well,
They try
give me a little bit more information on that. You mean if somebody dies and they have no family, or you just, or they're unclaimed?
Or you haven't chosen a funeral home, or it falls back on the family at that point?
It does, yeah. At some point, somebody's going to step up for that person that died and make the call to the funeral home.
Now, what if you want to donate your body to science? They have to go through a funeral home for that?
It does not actually. If you want to donate your entire body to science, it's an application and you have to actually be accepted by reaching out to either Yale or one of the hospitals or facilities, and then they accept you ahead of time. And then when you die, that facility comes and picks you up, does their thing, and then cremates you. And a funeral home usually is not involved at all. They'll take care of everything, but it's usually a cremation. And then your loved one,
Dispose of your ashes, or do they go to your family?
nope, they go back to your family. The only problem with that is, not problem, but it takes like 9 months to a year to get the ashes back. So it's tough sometimes for families for closure. You know, it just takes a while. Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. I just helped a family. They went through full body donation, and it was a year. And I think Yale took care of it.
But you know, it may have been, it ended up that the body wasn't what Yale wanted. But,
Oh,
you know,
oh, that's what. Yeah, and there are certain circumstances sometimes you can be declined.
Qualify for that?
Excuse me?
Is it hard to qualify for
I don't think so. I think it's calling up and filling out a questionnaire, and then
that? And you call Yale, or you call?
I think it's Yale, and then I think Yale does it. Yep. UConn's still might. I know UConn did it years ago. I'm not sure whether they still do it or not. Yes, ma'am.
The only other thing to donate body, don't donate it to Brown or out of state university.
They don't come and get it.
Accept it over. And my father-in-law was.
Yeah, sometimes if you're too old or if you die from something, that sometimes you're declined at the time of your death for a
So
whole
they
body
give it to you
donation.
now and then refuse you when you're dead?
Yes, sir.
Then what happens?
Well, then the family reaches out to the funeral home, and then we either bury you or cremate you, and you have services.
That's not solving the problem. That's creating a whole new problem.
Yeah.
No.
They just, you know, they accepted him when he was alive, but then by the time he died, he was so thin.
They still
But
they
so
still
they
took care of it.
body.
Right?
They took care of it.
You didn't have to go to a funeral home. or
No.
anything. Okay.
We never involved them.
So I'm missing something with the donate your body.
Sure.
So you're donating it.
Yep.
So that the doctors that are learning can basically cut you open and say, oh, there's a
Correct.
gallbladder. Oh, there's a. So it would take some time, but they didn't do that to him because he was too thin.
It was already.
Right. So
What do they do
your
when they
body is going to go somewhere for a while to be used.
Yes.
To teach
Yes.
medical
Yeah, and it would
students.
That's correct.
Or to do
About
tests to see,
operating
why
and-
this person died and what this is and what that is.
Certain
And there's
things.
autopsies and all that other nonsense to do. And, DNA and stem cells and eyeballs.
Yeah. And then once that is done, then the body is cremated, and then the ashes are returned to the family.
Yeah, and I think you, whatever attorney you have for your advanced care planning, I think the attorney's office might have the forms or they know how to download them to donate your body. So, and that's something that you could check on.
And I believe there's no cost, so obviously you eliminate funeral home costs. As far as I'm concerned, I think there's no cost to the family. They take care of the permits, they take care of the cremation, they take care of picking the person up where they die, cremating them, returning of the ashes to the family. No charge.
Even if they don't use the body.
Well, no, I'm talking about whole body donation. And if they're, if they're accepted and they're cremated, ashes are returned to the family. I'm under the impression there's no cost to the family at all for all of that.
So
And
if you're
that's different.
donating your body, your burial and all that is out.
No, it could happen after you get the ashes back.
But then that's.
Well, your ashes could be put into a green urn. You could be put into a biodegradable urn
Oh,
and put in the cemetery.
so you're still going
Correct. Yep,
That's different if you're a organ donor. What happens in that
it
case?
is. Organ donor, and again, I see more people being declined than accepted, but organ donor would take place in the hospital. So you would go to the morgue in the hospital, and then the team would come and harvest what they need to harvest. The person would still stay in the hospital, and then the funeral home's notified after that is done, and then we go pick the person up.
So at that point, you do have to have a funeral.
Yes,
also.
yes. That could be corneas, it could be, it could be skin, it could be bone. All depends. There's a company out there called Life Choice. They're out of Windsor, Connecticut, and they usually do the organ procurement. Yeah.
That's so that your family knows if you're doing organ donation, they have a limited amount of time to die with the body.
That's correct.
The body's got to be whisked away pretty quickly in order to protect the organ.
Correct. Usually it's, yeah, that's right. Usually it's,
Some people don't know that, and then they get really upset because like, what are you doing with dad?
yeah,
Well, he's an organ donor, and this is the protocol. So
they usually try to do the harvesting within a few hours to a half a day from the time of death.
Now, can you do the combo? The organs and the body?
Perhaps, I guess,
Well,
maybe.
On my license, I'm already an organ donor. I don't know, can you cancel that one if you're an organ donor?
I don't see why not. Or you could just tell your family, I refuse.
accepted. If you had no good organ,
Right.
they
Right,
would
but
say,
then I'm
"Sorry,
stuck in
Chris."
the middle.
Or you could just tell your family, look, I changed my mind. I don't want to be an organ donor. At the time of my death, please don't have that done to me. And then your family, your representative.
So it's not a mandate.
No,
it's an
no.
optional thing.
I think it is. Yeah. Oh, yes. Hi. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with cremation, you have so many options now. There's just so many choices with cremation. Sometimes services are delayed. Cremation gives you that flexibility. So I have many families that have services weeks or even months following their loved one's death, usually with full body burial. Usually it's customary and traditional, a few days to a week following that person's death. That hasn't changed. Mhm.
ashes and
Of course.
thing you hold on
Both.
in
Both. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the human composting.
Yeah.
So there's a company out in Oregon, and what the funeral director there did is she created this vessel that's like a honeycomb type of thing,
Okay.
and but it's in this big stainless steel cylinder, and the body goes in there, and then you are covered in straw, wood chips, maybe something else that's organic. No, not leaves. I think it's just straw and wood chips. And then it's kind of activated through a heating process. And so in about 4 or 5 weeks, the body then comes out, and whatever big bone or metal implants you had, they will take those away. They'll grind the bones, and then you go back in again, and at the end of about 8 weeks, you are basically soil. And they have a 6-acre green belt out near this facility. And if you want your soil to be put there, back into the earth, you can, or you can ask for burlap bags to be sent to you, and then that comes to your family, and they can plant a tree, or whatever you choose to do as a ceremony. You look up human composting in the state of Oregon. It could be, and that she is looking to have a facility. I don't believe that's happened yet.
So you're individually composting.
Yeah.
So they have to have a whole bunch of
Basically
these
end up-
vessels.
I don't know how many vessels she has. I don't know how many people choose it. But like Stephen said, that's a lot more popular out on the West Coast. But I would have to live here. No, you can die in Connecticut. The thing is, you're going to have to fly your body out
Yeah.
to Oregon.
I haven't heard any of that happening here in New England as far as.
I bet you will, though.
Oh, perhaps. It just takes the trends are coming. It just takes a little while.
Transport the body? You can't just transport a dead body, right?
The funeral home would bring it to the airport.
Yeah, we have
and
to
then
have
there's a
permits and
whole-
a licensed funeral director to accompany the body.
You have to accompany all the way there.
Well, no, to the airport, and then it goes on a plane, and then you'll have a receiving funeral home.
Yes.
Yep.
Would be this.
Yes.
I heard about 5,000.
Oh. What's that?
I heard that it was about 5,000.
I would say yes, from funeral home to funeral home, yes. I mean, obviously it's a plane ticket, but then you're involving 2 funeral homes. You have to prepare the body, or you have to put it on dry ice. The body goes in a container, taking it to the airport, and then the receiving funeral home to pick it up. So it could.
Can it go on a commercial airplane?
It does. It actually goes in the belly of the plane with the luggage.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's how my dad came
Yeah,
back from
that's.
Florida to Connecticut.
Yeah.
That was years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
It was my understanding. This has already been discussed. It was mentioned that many funeral homes, people were very much in favor of it.
Oh, they might be.
So I think, again, if people are interested, like a lot of other things, they're attracted to this idea. You do a little research, and then you talk to your representative, try to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Green burial is one thing. Soil home, plant a tree. Really takes grassroots. Work
That's right.
to make a lot of these changes. I
And
would
it has to be able to make money too. Right?
Yeah, there's also coming down the pike is a new process. Obviously now when you're cremated, it's intense heat. But now there's a process called alkaline hydrolysis, which is going to be cremating a body through the use of water. I don't know too much about it. Again, it's more of a trend out west, but that might be the new way of cremating somebody is through water. It is. Yeah, again, going towards that, not the smokestack and the intense heat coming out and the smoke and the chimney. And so I know it's happening. It's just not happening on the East Coast, but it is probably going to be coming.
I just heard about that the other day. What did you call it?
Alkaline hydrolysis, I believe, is the process. I don't know too much about it. I just know a little bit about how it works, and it's through the use of water to break down the body and salts and things like that. So you don't have that intense 1800 degrees high heat now that we currently use to cremate a body. Yeah, yeah.
And not every funeral home, you don't have your own crematorium. There's a place in Connecticut.
Oh, there's lots of in fact, there's Connecticut will not allow any more crematories to be constructed now in the state of Connecticut. We're at maximum, but yes, many funeral homes use third-party crematories. Some have their own, some do not. So
Why is that? Why did they say why there are only so many? That's like doesn't seem like that's.
they just are not permitting any more funeral homes or any more cremations to crematories to be erected in the state of Connecticut. I'm not sure why.
Well, it's not good.
No more crematories.
Yeah, environmentally, it's not good for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You don't get embalmed and cremated, or you can. Get
Oh,
both.
sure.
You do get both.
Sure.
So you're burning off
We
all
have
the
many
fat.
families. Families want services. They want a wake. They want a church service, or they want a funeral home service for their loved one, and then they're cremated. So, yep. A lot of different options.
And more to come.
More to come. More choices. There, that's the best option. Just don't die. Just don't die.
I'm too confused. I can't die yet.
That's my wish too. So I know Nick does a lot of wills and living wills and
Mhm.
stuff, and people come in, and now the state of Connecticut has a new form that has to be with every will. That's a piece of paper. It says disposition of remains.
Oh, jeez.
So you have to know where your remains are going to go. That has to be part of your paperwork. Yep. No? Is that a new law? It is, I think. All the new wills now have this piece of paper.
Huh. I didn't even know that.
Will, you don't have to have that piece of paper, right?
To make it that much harder for your family if you don't have a will.
Maureen, I will look into that.
Okay.
Because I have not seen
All the
but I
new
don't have
wills
any-
that I did before I left there, they all had, it was like the last 6 weeks, and I said, what's this new paper? And Patty said, all the wills have to have this now. It's called disposition of remains.
Oh, I know there is a disposition of remains in a name, but I don't know that it's I don't know that it's required.
Oh, okay.
But I'll look in. Good practice. Already saved you my will. That's right. I won't save it in my will.
Right.
So why do you
Is that
have-
disposition
Well, if you already say it,
cremation?
then
The
maybe
thing
that takes
about
place of that
saying it in
form.
your will is that the will does not get probated until probably 2 weeks after you die. So it doesn't do a whole lot of good except take care of me, right?
I am, yes. Hopefully not for a long time. Mhm.
Well, that's the best.
Yep. Yes, Kyle.
I have a question about
Oh, yeah, but my daughter said she'll kill me if I
I have a question about next of kin.
Yes.
And, in decision making. So
Yes.
say you are either unmarried or you are married but have children that are not of your spouse. So say I have say my dad is not married, but say my dad is married and it's my stepmother
Okay.
passes away. His next of kin is legally his wife, you know, I assume. What happens if there is disagreement within a family? Who, you know, how does that work? You know, I'm sure they could pull the funeral home into some family drama.
Yeah, they could. We have to be very careful. I mean, I don't ask, well, if I'm answering your question, I don't ask for identification. So if somebody comes in and they tell me they are who they are, I mean, I believe them. but at times, you know, next of kin, which could be a spouse, a child, a sibling, a nephew, next of kin is responsible legally, and you can probably verify this for me, for making funeral arrangements. We don't want to slight anybody else, but the next of kin have to come in, make the arrangements, and they're basically giving us instruction what to do with their loved one.
How is next of kin defined? What does that
So
mean?
it doesn't have.
Well, it could be obviously a spouse. It could be all the children of the marriage. It could be a sibling. It could be an attorney. If
But
some,
if it's not determined, how does
So
that be?
next of kin is, first off, your spouse, and if there's no spouse, it's your children.
correct?
So
Yep,
you generally will get into a situation where you have more than one child, they're all at the same priority level,
it's correct.
and if they can't agree, then you have a problem.
That's what I'm kind
Yeah.
What if
So
they
then
don't
we have like a little powwow.
Then you need to disposition of remains stuff.
Right. And we've gotten into that. You know, we've gotten into that. I'll give you an example. Somebody passes away and they're not married. I didn't mean to cut you off, but if there's 4 or 5 children, we have to talk to all the kids, especially if it's cremation. We have to make sure that they're all in agreement. Correct. And I won't cremate anybody unless I hear from all next of kin. It's very, very important. Now, I'll give you another example. I took care of this gentleman. He died. He had 7 children. He was estranged from all of his kids, and he was not married. And he's going to be cremated. So, of course, through the internet and Facebook and yada, 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 I had to reach out to all of the children to get consent. So obviously his cremation was delayed for quite a while until I spoke to everybody and they gave me consent. It had nothing to do with financial responsibility. It was just, look, you know, Dad's in my care. This is your responsibility and you have to give me permission. And so it can get difficult.
So you had to keep the body for this whole time?
I did several
Father
weeks.
didn't have a will.
I don't believe so. Or, well, if he did, the
had
kids,
a will that said, "I want
yes.
to,"
Yep.
you have to agree, even
Yep.
though he stated it in his
Yep,
will.
because the kids, and you can probably verify this for me, the kids can come in and change it and say, I want my dad buried. They have the right,
Unless there's a disposition of remains.
right. They can change the disposition from cremation to burial.
Not if
Not if there's a signed one.
not if there's a disposition of remains.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that existed, so that's good to know. Well, usually it's not brought up to us.
No, I usually the family agrees, but I've also had funerals where the kids, they can't get a hold of the kids. They'll come to probate.
Oh, and you mean take custody of the,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then the custody and disposition.
right. I think I've done that once or twice.
I just
Yes,
wanted
ma'am.
to share an experience that we had years and years and years ago when my mother-in-law was passing away, and she had a living will on a refrigerator. EMTs come in, they say, it's our responsibility to keep her alive as much as they can. We get her to the emergency room, she's still struggling to breathe, and the nurse says to the family, you can override that. I was heartbroken. I was like, that's not going to happen to me. My family is not going to override my wishes. So how can I guarantee that?
You would probably have to go to an attorney and get a document that's saying, look, you know, upon my death, this is what I want, not to be changed. Because I've had families come in and say, oh, well, I'm afraid that my child or my spouse is going to bury me and I want to be cremated. So I would suggest to that person to go to an attorney and have something drafted up.
My question is not as much my family, but the medical profession said you can override it. They should not have that right to do that.
While you're still alive.
While
Well,
you're
the
alive,
person is
yeah.
dying and we're watching them
but
die,
still alive, but on the way.
breathing,
Yeah.
struggling.
And this is why it's so imperative and important to have these conversations with your family members while you're healthy.
Yep.
And look at all, and not to just have it one time, but they say like on New Year's Day, you should like gather your family and say, look, the start of the new year, if I die this year, this is what I want.
Have the talk of a lifetime.
Yeah. Maybe we talked about this last New Year's Day, but we're going to revisit it because people change.
Mhm.
and siblings get along, and then they don't get along. And,
Yeah, we
you know,
see
people
it a
are
lot.
Favorite, and you know, there's so much of that you have to talk individually to your children and say, if you want to respect me and have less guilt and make it easy, these are my wishes. And we tend to, as human beings, put it off, because you know we're all going to live forever.
Right.
You know, none of us are going to die.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Until we can become.
Even if you don't make prearrangements, just have that talk with your family. Look, this is what I want. This is what I don't want. So at least they know. You know.
It's not the
Mhm.
same. So when the EMTs come, even if your living will is on the refrigerator, they, unless you have a do not resuscitate bracelet on, they are going to. Well,
But you have to be unconscious to be resuscitated.
well, if you,
Dead.
Or dead. yeah.
well, they're gonna work on you. I mean, they're gonna give you the paddles, they're gonna have to do, unless you have a DNR bracelet on. Your living will,
But as long as you're breathing and functioning, that doesn't apply, right? Not do not touch me, it's do not resuscitate me if I'm not functioning.
do not resuscitate, DNR, DNI.
You don't want to be hooked up to machines and any of that stuff.
And that's
Mhm.
where that molt form comes in.
I have my notary stuff too, if anybody.
So there's a MOLS or a PULSE, which is physician ordered life sustaining for medical. Something
Physician.
life sustaining treatment, and it has to be filled out with you and your physician, and you talk to your physician that if you're in a position where you do not want to come back, you want to just die, that form is a legal document. Becca, actually, Moira has one. Becca's going to notarize it. Probate. She's going to notarize it and look at it. That goes into your medical record. Look up PULSE, POLST, but sometimes it comes MOLST.
Medical orders for life sustaining. That's
Right.
do not resuscitate and
Yes.
choices and chronic or emergency. It's got everything in there.
My father's nearing the end of his life, and he just had his annual with his primary care physician, and they went over this with him, and he gave it to me for record keeping, keep with all his paperwork, and it's a bright pink.
Yeah.
Him and his doctor signed it together, and he gave it to me in charge of
Yeah.
passes. And so you could just ask your primary care.
And when you do ask the primary care, typically they don't know what you're asking for. And then they go online and find it and then come back with their copies and they go over it with them. So it's not really that confident in what's happening, but I will get it moved on.
Kyle,
I
yes.
have another question.
Sure.
I'm kind of following up. If a family prearranges their own services and they do all that paperwork and they pay for it with you, does that become gospel? So say mom wants to be involved in open casket and pays for it and signs the paperwork, and then she passes away and the kids are like, nah, we don't want to do that anymore. Which way do we go?
You mean as far as being refunded? You mean, or not paying for that?
No, if say you pre-plan
Yep.
for it and say, I want casket and embalming, and then the kids are like, no, we want to cremate mom and spread her out on Ocean Beach.
They can do that.
They can override.
They can override. the
Sure.
wishes.
Sure.
Oh wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
But again, that's a conversation that you should have had,
Yes.
I can't stress enough
Yeah.
that communication
I-
about what you want.
Yeah.
But once you're dead, you have no choice, right?
Well,
So
I don't think so.
You can
So for myself, I want to be buried. I want to be put in a mausoleum. But my wife can say, well, no, I don't want that for him. I'm going to cremate him. And she has the power to do that. Unless. See, we never get copies. Families never really bring in wills because it's not something that we need to know about. So I didn't even realize that.
So you don't have,
That might be something you might
So you-
want to start
well, maybe that's what the new law is that they're gonna require.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I'm-
don't know. I don't know
Not
if you're
everybody has
legally
it.
bound.
Very rare. I do a lot of
What's that?
estate planning, and I only do that job.
sometimes they just tell us that, but we don't never, because they ask us sometimes, do you need to see a copy of the will? And we're like, no, which we really don't, because it really has nothing to do other than that one form of their final disposition. But
So it's not required on the will as far as
I'm
you know.
gonna
but-
check for next time, because, listen, I don't do it for all my clients. Most of them are married and their spouse knows what they want. My mother said, I don't really care, do whatever you want with me, I'm dead. So a lot of people don't care, but other people are very passionate about it.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to put that on my kids because I have 4 kids.
Right.
Right.
The possibility that they're all going to agree because they're pretty strong-willed. So for me, I just want that taken care of so that then they feel they're following my wishes and then it absolves them. Hopefully they're going to be grieving for me anyway, so that it will absolve them of any guilt about the way that I wanted it to, that was taken care of. And the thing, when I first brought up about the disposition of remains, I brought it up because Nick is saying that more and more people are coming in now and saying, I would like a green burial.
interesting.
And he kind of rolls his eyes and go, oh boy, you want a green burial? You know,
Put wire on it.
so, you know, I'm just saying that you said it's a trend, but I think the trend is more here
Huh.
than, because I think the younger generation, like Kyle and, you know, I'm not of that generation, they're gonna want more choices.
Oh,
They're gonna
most
want,
most
you know,
definitely. Most definitely. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And most cemeteries are going to have to just change with the times, and they're going to have to offer that
Yes.
because more and more people want choices, alternative options. Yes, Beth.
Do you think that we have to pass a law to allow composting? Are there only certain ways in Connecticut that you can dispose of body?
I would think so. Just like Viking funerals. I mean, I get asked all the time, can I have a Viking funeral? No, because we don't have the permits for that. So it's going to be come down to a statute thing for any of that.
Yeah, what the penalties are, right? for, like,
Oh yeah, I mean it's it's impossible. It's impossible. I don't know anybody that does that. I don't even think you can get away with doing it. A Viking funeral.
No, but if you did it, there probably would be some serious. Who would be responsible? The person who lit you on fire?
Oh yeah, right. I don't know.
Well, in some cultures though.
Oh, yeah.
That is the way that they bury their.
Yeah, in some countries probably. Well outside of my wheelhouse, but no.
Bury anybody, like even ashes at sea, you have to be a certain miles out.
Technically 2 nautical miles. Technically. Nobody's checking that.
But I won't put it in a, I won't put that I want to be, you know, my ashes sprinkled necessarily, but, you know, it's hard to, I'm trying to help people.
Yes. Yes.
It's putting that in a disposition of remains document, I always
Yep. Kyle,
I apologize for all my questions.
questions are good.
Kyle.
We know the questions
If I-
to ask. We don't.
Say I meet with you tomorrow and I prepay and plan. I'm 32 years old.
Yeah.
Say I don't pass away for 30 more years.
Yep.
And I
Oh,
paid
God.
for it.
Oh, give yourself
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Give yourself more time, Kyle.
What happens if of course, like the pricing is going to change in 30 years. So
Great question.
for the cemetery, at least, if you buy your plot today, you are paying what it's, for at least for our cemetery, if you buy a plot today, it's $2,500 for a standard plot. And our prices go up in 10 years to $3,500. You're locked in already. You paid for it at that price. Is it the same with funeral services?
At my funeral home, I guarantee all of today's costs. I can't speak for other funeral homes, but for the 18 years that I've been here in town, I have guaranteed all of my costs. But what you have to do is for you to be guaranteed, you have to come in and pay for all of your funeral home costs, not just some. And then I would guarantee, I give you a contract, and then it says in the contract everything is guaranteed. So as costs go up, you're not responsible for any of the increases because the interest that you're earning in your account is keeping up with inflation. So at the time of that person's death, there has always been enough money in the account to pay for the funeral. And if there is a shortfall, if the savings vehicle didn't keep up with inflation, then I eat it. So
Price goes down, you're gonna refund the difference.
as long as a person's not on Title 19 when they die, yes. If they're on Title 19, I'm required to give it back to the state. So yes, I still guarantee all of my funeral costs. So
But not all funeral homes operate that way.
that's correct. They make their own decisions. It all depends where the money is invested and how it's invested. So I used to use the local bank, and we know what local banks pay for interest. So I've gotten away from the banks, and I use another savings vehicle, which earns about 3%. It's invested in safe government bonds, and you get 3% on that. So it's, still ahead of inflation. Not much, but it's still hanging in there. So that's why I'm still guaranteeing the funerals. So, and I hope to continue to do that, but who knows? But some families don't have all the funds to prepay. So some families just come in and put down a deposit, and then they make payments as funds become available. So it depends on the person's financial situation. Yep. Also, too, how it protects you if you prepay with a funeral home and that funeral home goes out of business, the building burns down, they move. They can move their prearranged prepaid contract to any other funeral home of their choosing. So, which is kind of good. If they relocate to California, or like I said, the funeral home goes out of business, they can move their trust because that trust is in their name. It's not in the funeral home's name. So, any other questions? A lot of good questions.
Very helpful. The woman that I and Rita and Lavina took our doula course from has now done this book, Living Fully and Dying Prepared. And this book will ask a lot of questions in the back. It's kind of like a death journal or a life journal. And it goes through questions to ask of yourself, and it requires some writing or some typing that you put in, and that your wishes are then here, either in this book or in another binder somewhere. There's a space here for like pets, instructions and wishes for their pets, all of your passwords and logins. I know I have accounts and they're all like different. And I know when my son had his injury, we could not remember what his, he was unconscious for 7 weeks, coma, and so we had no idea how to get to his phone, how to like contact his bank, and one of my daughters finally figured it out, and so then we were able to call the banks and tell them, even though my husband's an attorney. So that's a really important thing to do. Financial information, in the back, it's Social Security, location of important documents, just a whole bunch of organized and task lists. I'm not saying you have to get this book. I think the library might be getting a copy so that you could always just copy pages that pertain to you in the copy. But there's just a lot of good stuff in this book. Your life review. Some of the things are hard. Some of the exercises are hard because you have to spend time with yourself. Answer some hard questions. If you don't want to do that, you can just skip over the hard part and just go to the more practical part. And it's called Living Fully and Dying Prepared. And that's basically what Stephen's been talking about tonight is his business is one aspect of dying prepared, but there are a lot of other aspects to live a full life. Next month, Beth is going to talk to us kind of about the all that system. So if you have friends and you want to, like, tell them, I know when my husband was there to probate, they go to the different libraries to talk about, and they get 100 people that would come and had like tons of questions like we had tonight. So that will be October, and they'll send out the little flyer for you to remind you when it's coming up. But if anyone wants to look at this book, Francesca Arnaldi. Here, you can pass it around. You can look at it. Yep.
Okay. Ask a question about COVID.
Sure.
Now, I personally don't want to make it because, yeah, that's all I need to say. But so what's the process for that for a family member? Because when my mom passed, she wanted it in our paper because she was here. But we were born and raised. So I had to get it in two papers.
Okay.
The day said that there was no charge for local deaths. They would pass it on to Stanford. We were all residents there. But they got it in after the fact. What's the process so that it's all done? Time. Do you need individual? Is that a funeral?
Usually, well, again, speaking at my funeral home, 99% of the time, if I'm answering your question, I submit the obituary to the necessary paper or papers for the family.
The family brings it to you.
At times or sometimes I write it for them and give it to them, and then they work on it, embellish on what I write, and then they send it back to me. Or sometimes they want to try to write it on their own, and then I'll outsource it to the papers for them.
Is that a thing in this book, Maureen?
Yes, I think so.
And
I'm
all
not positive,
newspapers
I haven't
now
read the whole book yet.
charge, and they charge a lot of money.
It was like 400.
No more freebies.
Yeah.
So all the paper, yeah, its average cost is about $300-400 a paper. Yes, ma'am.
I have a lot of friends
Mm-hmm.
a couple that are asking, have you done that yet? I haven't, but I think it's really a good idea.
It is, yeah.
When we took our class for the end of life doula, one of our assignments was that we had to write our own obituary. And I just didn't really like the fact that it just listed things. So when I wrote my own obituary, which I have to now, that was a while ago, so I have to revisit it. I wrote it as a letter to my community. That was my take on an obituary. I think if you think of it as a life story, it's easier to write because we're all a story, right? We've all lived this life that, everything is different. And there was this one obituary. I can't believe you asked this question, Liz, because I just looked at it today, and I won't mention the man's name. It mentions, that he passes away and how old he was and where he was born, and he was the husband of. And then whoever wrote this, I thought was clever. It says, using a puppy to strike up a conversation with an attractive sunbather, he met on the beach in New Bedford and continued that conversation for more than 68 years. So what I'm telling you is that it doesn't have to be this cut and dried. It can be, you can make it what you want. You can put warmth into it. It doesn't just have to be this like staccato type of a thing. And then it goes on to say what he did in the military and how he developed the safety bell that is still used in the Navy's standard rescue mechanism for submarines. It says he was extraordinarily resilient, having achieved a successful personal and professional life, intelligent and curious. He also had a heart of gold and could always be counted on to lend a hand, solve a problem, or give an opinion. Now, to me, when I read that, I feel like I kind of know this guy. You know, I feel like, geez, I wished I had met him. I wished I had come across him in life. People were never in doubt as to where he stood on any subject. With an extensive workshop that reflected his organizational skills, precision, resourcefulness, and intensity of purpose, he could fix anything. One could count oneself as lucky to have received one of his handcrafted wooden nickels that he doled out to people all over the world. And then it just goes on about his family and where they traveled and, you know, I don't know if they charge obituaries by word length.
They do.
But you know what? It's an obituary. It's the one time where people are going to read about you. And so what I'm saying is make it worthwhile. Don't just have it be the. These are the people that survived me. You know?
I love reading obituaries. It's like a little short story.
Yeah.
You know, and some are better than others.
Yeah,
but I have
exactly.
To say, I read obituaries every day.
I do too, but I don't really. I just look at the name. But the thing that drives me crazy is 90% of them are, somebody always says, they lit up the room when they walked in. I know a lot of people, now they're gonna die, they never lit up the room.
They burned it down.
You know, I mean, it's just stuff like that. Anyone says that about me, to write my own.
Yeah, write your own obituary. Yeah.
You don't gotta lie a lot.
It's a live story.
Well, thank you for coming at 6:30.
Thank you very much for.
Stephen.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, good. Thank you.
Well, if we find any changes coming along the way,
Yes.
pass them on to you.
And did you give the date for the probate? Because I'd like to attend that. What do you have that, or is it?
It's on the library thing.
Oh, it's on the website.
It's October 12th. It's the second Thursday. We meet
Oh,
the second Thursday.
Thursday.
of the
Oh,
month.
okay.
Yeah, the library.
I definitely
will.
want to
Yeah.
attend that.
Ask them. Put you on the